Hello, Elizabeth Stitt from Joyful Parenting Coaching, where stressed out parents get the skills they need to create the happy, harmonious homes they desire and deserve. Thank you so much for coming today to the 3 tips for keeping your kids from rebelling workshop. I am so very glad you are here. You are my favorite kind of parents, the proactive kind. Let's give yourself a high five or a pat on the back for showing up and taking the time to access this content. I know you're busy. I know that you've got a lot of other things on your plate with your kids, and I promise to make this an impactful and informative session for you. So, remember when your little one hung on your absolutely every word and followed in your every footstep? Raise your hand if the question that you ask yourself now is, where did my sweet baby go? Or, how am I going to raise the child I have now? Before we start, I'd love to just introduce myself a little bit. My name is Elizabeth Stitt. I taught middle school for most of my 25 years of teaching career, and that taught me how incredibly competent tweens and teens are when we give them the chance to plan things for themselves and to some degree, be the directors of their own life. A little bit about me. I was teaching, I got married, I had a daughter, I was checking off the things I was supposed to do, but like many families, we got divorced, and then I got remarried. This is my husband Bala and my mother-in-law Sri Devi, and we blended the family when the kids were 5, 7, and 9. Those are my stepsons, Jai and Rohit, my daughter Julie. I left teaching after 25 years because I'd noticed such a shift in my students. And then I noticed a shift in parents when I started talking to them. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, the bar for good parenting was much lower. To a large degree, it was keep your kids safe and turn them into a reasonably decent human being. Did your parents say to you, like, I don't want to go outside and play, I don't want to see you unless there's blood? That is a really different place to be parenting from than today. So, yeah, sure, we still were adolescents, we still were going through adolescent changes, we still got emotional, but there wasn't the sheer number of outside forces and influences pressing down on our kids and pressing down on us as parents. Most kids pretty much got from graduate school to, they got from school and they graduated and they went on to their jobs without too much trouble, and we didn't have to worry about them too much. Today, things are really different. A lot has changed. Did you know that 10 is the new 13? Yep. That means what you were worried about and thinking about when you were 13 is now what your kids are worried about and thinking about at 10, right? So at 13, I don't know about you, but I was worried about the pimple on the end of my nose. I was kind of wondering about spin the bottle and what is French kissing, and I had just gotten my period, so I was worried that somebody would know, that they'd be able to tell, or that I'd have an accident. These are the things that 10-year-olds are worried about today. That's changed for them, and it means that it has really changed for us as parents. So, what are we going to get by the end of our time together today? You will have learned why the teenage brain is wired both for rebellion and for risk, and how that rebellion and risk can be redirected into something uh, that will bring more harmony to your home, as well as more productivity. And then finally, what strategies you can use with your teen to keep your household peaceful, to keep your teens on track, and to have an even stronger bond with them as they go through those teenage years. Tip number one is redirecting rebellion into responsibility. Our kids need the chance to separate from us and to have a different view of how to do things and what to do and what to believe. That's part of growing up. That is part of their biological imperative. Do you know, I used to think that the risk and the rebellion was a byproduct of the hormones that were in the body changing the primary sex characteristics into mature ones. But what social scientists, neuroscientists now believe is that not only is there a lot of chemistry going on to help us go from our little kid bodies to our adult mature bodies, but the brain is also rewarding teens for stepping outside the community. So go back and think of hunter-gatherer times. And, you know, you've got a tribe over here, you have a tribe over here. And if we're going to cross-populate, right, if we're going to mix up the genetic material of the tribes, then you need a boy who is pulling away from his parents. His parents have said, don't talk to strangers, don't go wandering, don't go out, it's a dangerous world out there. But he rebels, and he goes anyway. And in fact, when he rebels, in that moment when he pushes away and says, I'm not going to do what you said to do, his brain is releasing feel-good chemicals to reward him for that bravery, that courage, that step away from his parents. And meanwhile, in the village over here, there's an adolescent girl who's also being told, be careful, stay safe, stay close to home, who goes, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I can take care of myself. You're treating me like a baby. I'm a grown-up. And so when she sees the good-looking stranger from the other tribe come over the horizon, instead of running and telling everybody, she allows herself to be drawn towards him and to talk to him. So that was the biological imperative, because then they meet and the genetic material gets exchanged. In order for her to do that, because it's a scary world out there and strangers are scary, her brain releases reward chemicals that say, yes, this is the right thing to do. Aren't you brave? Aren't you courageous? So that's the biological imperative for our kids. They, in order to separate, in order to become adults and grown up, and historically in order to go out and meet new people and to fall in love and to have more babies, not that we still don't have some of that today, but our biological brain hasn't caught up with modern society. So that's still what our kids are getting rewarded for. So how can we use that as parents? What can we do to get that going? The wise parent works with their teenagers' biology rather than against it. The wise parent meets their teens' need for #adulting, right? And this is not a linear process, because kids at this age, you know, in one moment they are 23 And in the next moment, they're acting like a 3-year-old again. In one moment, they're 16, and the next moment, they're acting like a 6-year-old. And then they might settle back down at 12 or 13. So, on the one hand, they want to adult, and then on the other hand, there's that fear like, I can't do this, I can't adult. But then that drive will reassert itself to prove their grown upness. There are lots of ways to prove grown upness. Wouldn't you rather that your kids were proving their grown upness by taking responsibility for things rather than by drinking or doing something else? Here's something I want you to think about. With training and with flexibility about how they do it and when they do it, anything you do on the home front, a 12, 13, 14-year-old can learn to do too. I'm going to say it again. With training and given some flexibility on how and when it's done, anything that you can do, a 12, 13, 14-year-old can learn to do as well, not to mention an older child. On the whole, not uniformly, on the whole, I find that there are more parents, at least in the US, who are not allowing their kids to have responsibility and who are not giving their kids things to do compared to parents who are. Here's the great thing about adulting. If kids see something as their responsibility, if they really take ownership for it, then rather than it being something that you are constantly nagging them to do, they are more likely to just do it consistently. And if they're failing to do it consistently, it's more likely that that is a executive functioning skill. They need some kind of system to help them remember rather than a rebellion of not doing it, right? When we come from a top-down place and we just tell our kids what to do, then they have something to push against. Then the rebellion is not doing it. But when we can arrange it so that they are doing tasks and taking ownership for it in their own way, because we are letting them do it their own way, we're not micromanaging how they're doing it, including sort of when it needs to get done by, then that becomes theirs. And they're not having to push against it, right? So now we're turning rebellion into responsibility. So I'm curious, what are the kids in your house doing? What can they be doing? Are they helping with the cooking? Are they doing any of the cleaning? 12, 13, 14-year-olds can certainly be doing their own laundry. And there's all kinds of advantages to that. If you've got a kid who takes off an outfit and then tries on a new one and changes 3, 4, 5 times a day and leaves the clothes in a heap, asking them to be responsible for doing their own laundry can make an enormous shift in their taking responsibility for when they are doing it, because it removes you from the equation and it gives you a chance to be empathetic. Mom, I don't have anything to wear. Oh, you didn't do your laundry and your favorite blouse isn't clean? Yeah, I know. I hate it when that happens to me. So instead of getting caught up in the you're not doing it, you should have done it, I put it there, why da 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 da, right? It just enables us to just sort of be alongside them going like, oh yeah, totally get it, not doing the laundry and not having what you want. Yep, but I'm sure you'll work it out, sweetheart. Right? Now we've got peace where before we had conflict. Kids can also help with higher level skills like fiddling with the toilet. I have a toilet which is leaking, and I keep thinking, oh, I need to go. I keep hearing it. I was like, oh, I've got to go adjust that. Got to go adjust that toilet. That's a great kind of task for a 12, 13, 14-year-old to do because it feels like an adulting task. It feels like, oh, look at me. I'm competent and capable. I can take care of this. And kids are more likely to go and do it. Often when we give chores, we give kids the boring chores. Well, what if we ask for their help or their assistance with what for them will feel like a more sophisticated chore? What if they are helping to pay the bills online? Or when we need the plumber because we haven't been able to adjust the toilet, we say, hey, could you go online and look up some Yelp reviews and find a few good plumbers and call them and see who can come out today? Again, to us, that is just one more thing to check off of our to-do list. But for them, that is big time #adulting. And then we can reinforce it by giving them tons of praise and appreciation for what they have been able to do for us. Here's a pro tip. Your kids love being an important part of the family. They don't want to be separated from you. They need to separate their identity and their ideas from you, but they still need their tribe. They still need their home base, even as they are going out and talking and creating relationships and tribes with their friends. That doesn't mean that we cease to be that most important source of security. Okay, tip number 2 for how to keep our kids from rebelling is to exchange dangerous, risky behaviors for what feels like high-risk challenges to them, but what we recognize as being safe or low-risk challenges. And some kids do this naturally. They do it on their own. But sometimes we need to help choreograph that or to set that up for them. Just as the teenage brain is designed for rebellion biologically, just as they get a dopamine hit, it's also designed for risk. When they take a risk, when they act courageously, they get rewarded with it. So once again, the wise parent is going to work with the biology rather than against the biology. So let's brainstorm some challenges that are safe but high risk, rather than leaving our kids vulnerable to choosing risks that are not safe, right? Remember, why do kids engage in high-risk behavior? Because when they do, they get a dopamine rush that makes them feel good. And we still know that a little bit ourselves, right? Think about your mountain climbing or your rock climbing or your hiking, and it's a little rocky or a little slippery, and you have to kind of get up there. And the achievement of getting to the top of the mountain gives us that big uplift, right? And it's sort of, you have to think about it, it's kind of funny, right? Like from 0 to halfway up the mountain may be the same distance as halfway to the top of the mountain, but when you go 0 to halfway, you don't get that big reward. You don't get that adrenaline rush that goes, yes, yes, look at me, king of the mountain, I did it. We do it, get it, for reaching the top of the mountain. And that would be equally true if the peak were half as high. We would still get a rush for being the top of the mountain. So our kids will still get a dopamine rush if they engage in safe high-risk behaviors as opposed to not safe high-risk behaviors. So let's list and think about some high risk, some safe high risk challenges. I'm thinking that in this mode, I'm not going to be able to type for you and be able to add it. So I'm just going to, ideally, this is what you would do. Ideally, you would turn off the tape and think of some and list them some yourself. Otherwise, just listen. Here are some examples of things we can ask our kids to do that feel perfectly safe to us, but for an 11, 12, 13-year-old is going to feel risky. We can ask them to go in and pick up our dry cleaning. You might think, what? Why is that a risk? It's a risk because you have to talk to a stranger. You have to trust that the system's going to work, that when you present the chit that they're going to find it. You have to make a payment of some kind. You have to risk the clerk in the dry cleaning office saying, aren't you too young to pay? Where's your mother? And being able to say calmly, my mother's outside. She gave me permission. This is fine. Please give me my clothes. And having that confidence, that's a high adrenaline activity for a 12, 13, 14-year-old. But when they've done it, they're going to get that dopamine rush. Yes, I got the dry cleaning. I paid for it. I'm coming back to the car, having gone on my quest. I am a successful warrior. Same thing with mailing packages in the post office. Do you know, I still get a little nervous when I have to answer the question of, is there anything explosive or corrosive or da-da-da-da-da. You know, I always have this moment of like, oh no, am I going to get in trouble? Am I doing something wrong? Oh, no, there's none of that stuff. That's a great moment for your kids because when they have conquered that moment, they have achieved something and their brain is going to reward them for acting even though they were afraid. Other ideas, making a dinner reservation, same thing, having to get on the phone and do it. I know we all use Open Table now, so you don't actually have to talk to a human being. But let's say that you can't find, there's no reservation available in the system. So then you could say to your child, hey, I want you to call them and double check that they can't accommodate us. Because sometimes there's a lag between what the computer tells us and what's the reality. Making travel arrangements for the family. This is a fantastic way to give your child an opportunity to put themselves out there and take a risk. Imagine if, they have arranged for the hotel room and you get it wrong, right? Then you're going to show up in a city, you're not going to have a hotel room. There's a big downside. Well, that big downside is what produces the big upside when they have achieved it and when they've done it right. And you can always double check their work, right? They can make the reservation, you can always go back and check. We had a problem with Europe one summer because instead of, we wanted a hotel room for August 7th, right, which is 8/7, and the child made the reservation for July 8th, which is 7/8, but of course in Europe the date gets turned around. But that was a fabulous learning lesson, right? So much better than a parent making that themselves and not asking their child to think, or micromanaging what it is and doing it. And it all turned out okay. We had a moment of panic, but it was okay. And other successfully made reservations, we were able to praise and be grateful. Like, thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you for taking that off my adult plate and stepping up to the plate, taking responsibility for that. I know it was a risk, but you did it, right? Your kid is going to get that dopamine rush. All right, so here are some examples of the kinds of ways in which kids can do safe things that are going to feel dangerously scary to them. And because it feels scary, when they've achieved it, they're going to get the dopamine rush that says yes. And that's going to feel good to them. All right, along those same lines, tip number 3 for keeping our teens from rebelling and from engaging in risky behaviors is to give them the tools for hashtag adulting. They want to feel capable, they want to feel competent. And honestly, it is much easier to fix the toilet than it is to learn algebra, right? This is concrete, but it's meaningful. It makes a difference, right? It's when I fix the toilet, the whole family is happy because now life is going so much more smoothly. When I do algebra, it has no bearing on real life. It has no connection to the adult I'm going to become. And even if we know that it does build skills and blah, 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 in the child's mind, it doesn't. It doesn't connect to something concrete and meaningful. And it's not something that we say, oh, thank you. Thank you for solving the quadratic equation. I'm so appreciative of that. We don't say that. We don't feel that. But when they have finagled the toilet into working smoothly again so that my day goes more smoothly, oh, thank you. I'm so grateful for that. Okay, successful parents trust that they have delivered their message to their kids, right? As 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds, we've been training our kids. We've been teaching them how to be in the world. We've been giving them social, emotional skills, right? By the time your child is 11 or 12, believe me, your voice is very firmly in your child's head. If I sat down with your child and I said, what are the things that your parent really cares about and that's really important to them? What are their rules of how to be and how to live? Your child would be able to give me a very complete list. You would look at this list and go like, oh my gosh, they really were listening to me. They've never behaved like they were listening to me, but they were really listening to me. And now, as a teenager, teens rebel because it is their biological job at this stage to separate from you so that they can form their own identity and bring in their own identity. And by the way, that's why we get the spiked hair, the dyed hair, the, you know, nose piercing, ear piercing, nipple piercing, tattoo, um, alcohol experimentation, drug experimentation. They are trying to differentiate themselves. They are trying to be different, say different, look different in order to have a separate identity. Right now, at this stage, they just want you out of their head. They want to feel that they're making their own independent decisions, right? So the more that we are there, the more we're saying, listen to me, right? You know what I really think you should do? Don't throw your future away. Don't do drugs. You should have studied more. That boy doesn't respect you the way he should. Nice girls don't swear. The more we layer on, paint on all those messages, the more they're going to be like this girl who's just screaming, get out of my head, go away, get out of my head. So I want you to trust. They already know that. They already know they should have studied more. They already know that they shouldn't do drugs. They already know that they shouldn't throw their future away. They're not trying to. They're trying to not do it. They even know when you say, you know what I think you should do? They know what you think they should do. They may not say it, but they've been living with you for the last 10, 12, 13, 14 years. They know you. They know what you're going to say. So instead, I want you to empower your kids. I want you to see them trying. You have so many great ideas. I want you to see them showing up. You work so hard. I want you to treat them with respect. by asking, what do you think would be a good thing to do right now? Reassure them of who they are. You've got such a good head on your shoulders. When they mess up and fail, don't jump in to solve. That's going to increase their need to push you away, to rebel against what you say. Instead, just ask them, what do you want to do differently? Reassure them. Yeah, you messed up. It's okay. You've got a lot of time to get this right. Or better yet, I'm sure you'll figure it out. I'm sure you'll figure out what's best. And of course, you can always add, and if you need some help, I'm here. But you don't actually have to say it, because if you've been present, they know that already. They know that you're there to help them. And if you haven't been jumping down their throat in exactly how to do it and what to do, they will even trust that they can come to you as a sounding board. Okay, we've gone over our 3 tips, and that is the gist of how to be present with your teens. Give them ways and space to rebel and to take risks that will keep you in a respectful relationship to each other, feeling close to each other, and also knowing in your heart that they are safe. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm Elizabeth Stitt with Joyful Parenting Coaching.